Hi everyone here and around the world. Since last month's spring equinox celebration of this Earthfiles YouTube channel breaking through 200,000 subscribers, today, this date of April 13th, we broke through 205,000. It is such a good feeling to keep growing with all of your wonderful support. And this past week, my daughter Laura and granddaughter Hannah from Philadelphia came to Albuquerque, where we had a deer come by. And Fluffy and Chocolate loved being with Hannah, along with my brother Jim Moulton and me for an Easter week vacation together after so much time apart because of COVID. Many of your questions for tonight were about animal mutilations, which is the phenomenon that provoked my first UFO and ET investigations for my TV documentary, A Strange Harvest. That was 43 years ago in September of 1979. Animal mutilation reports I always place in my Real X-Files category of my Earthfiles.com website so that they are behind a subscription wall. And that means that children and sensitive people are protected from the photographs. But the truth is, the photographs are pristine. After 43 years of investigating and working with veterinarian pathologists and other medical experts, it is always the clean precision of the excisions without blood and the lack of struggle or any tracks at the site, even on snow, where mutilated animals are found. And this is what separates this mystery from the misinformed explanations of predator, disease, and satanic cult. What I have studied for so long is not explained by any of those categories. And this week, I received from Cindy Vetter, who is now 68 years old, an email about her being haunted by her own encounter at age 12 with a bloodlessly mutilated animal. Cindy has lived her life in the Chester County region of Pennsylvania near Chadds Ford, where she grew up with her younger brother and parents surrounded by farm fields. It's about 32 miles southwest of Philadelphia. On her 12th birthday, February 23rd, 1966, Cindy and her family were shocked and confused by what they found that day. Reading from her email with her permission. Quote, on my 12th birthday, which was in February 1966, I went outside to feed my rabbit. The rabbit was housed in a cage about 4 feet off the ground, and part of the cage was plywood enclosed with a floor and a latched door. The other part of the cage was heavy wire mesh. The rabbit didn't greet me in the mesh part as she usually did. Upon opening the latched part, I saw the body of my headless rabbit. There was no blood anywhere, and the neck wound looked to be cauterized closed. It had snowed heavily the night before, and there were no footprints or tracks and no blood. The cage door was still latched. I ran back into the house to tell my parents, who came running out. They saw no blood, no tracks, and no head. After some discussion, I was told not to tell anyone about this because it could not be explained. Both parents were very freaked out, but offered no explanation. Both my parents are deceased now, but my younger brother remembers this as I do, and I talked with her on the phone this morning and learned that her mother's sister, who is now in her early 90s, she remembers this very well. And Cindy says, I've read your books on animal mutilations, but don't recall any small domestic type animals being targeted. Were domestic type animals targeted? And please let me know your opinion in this strange mystery that has haunted me for years. Love your show, Cindy Vetter. Now, I am going to go to page 174 in my first book, my second book, Glimpses of Other Realities, Volume 1, Facts and Eyewitnesses. And on page 174, for those of you who have this book, you will see the photographs that are on the screen now. And this is what I wrote. In 1990 to 91, while I was producing Earth Mysteries, Alien Life Forms in Atlanta, Georgia, and then working as creator and supervising producer of the Fox Network Hour Special UFO Report Sightings based on my Earth Mysteries, I received mutilation reports from Oregon, Virginia, Arkansas, Kentucky, Tennessee, Illinois, Arizona, Texas, Canada, England, and Long Island, New York, like these two rabbits. The date was April 21st, 1990 at Sound Beach, Long Island. Two rabbits were found a few hundred feet from each other, dead and mutilated. No blood, no tracks. One of the rabbits was headless, and one had the now classic removal of eye tissue around an empty eye socket that is found in large animals around the world. Long Island investigators sent Dr. John Altshuler both rabbits intact. In all the excision lines, Dr. Altshuler found evidence of high heat, and that bottom photograph is a photomicrograph in which the arrow is pointing at cooked hemoglobin. And I also received a question from Damon DeLuca this week asking, what are good sources of the physical and law enforcement eyewitness accounts of cattle mutilations in the 1970s to 1980s and the black helicopters seen around those areas? Well, the eyewitnesses have included beams of light, but not necessarily seeing the animals themselves being mutilated. And what I wanted to do was to show you the cover of a really important book that is now out in reprint, Mystery Stalks the Prairie. And Keith Wolverton was the deputy that I interviewed when I was working on A Strange Harvest and then my book, An Alien Harvest. And Keith Wolverton had so many cases that he ended up working with a reporter in Great Falls, Montana. They did the very first Mystery Stalks the Prairie that I had when I was working in 79 to 89. And this is now being reprinted by the River Bend Press, Post Office Box 5833, Helena, Montana 59604. They have a phone number that is 406-449-0200, and the website is riverbendpublishing.com. I recommend this book highly. I interviewed Keith Wolverton, who told me about the rancher who went out hunting, had a .30-06 rifle, came around a bend on a ranch where he had had animal mutilations, and what he's confronted with is an approximately 8 to 9 foot tall, very hairy creature. And the rancher drew his gun, shot at the rifle, shot at the creature, and it disappeared in a flash of light. And those words, "and it disappeared in a flash of light," were written in the official law enforcement document that Keith Wolverton had brought up, and that's what he was telling me about, the mystery of, is there a link also between the presence of the Sasquatch or Bigfoot with animal mutilations, UFOs, and the intelligences in those UFOs. So this is for those of you who would like to get more firsthand from law enforcement, that is an excellent book. Now, back in 1979, when I was producing A Strange Harvest, the documentary for the CBS station in Denver, that's when law enforcement told me, just straight out, the perpetrators of the bloodless domestic ranch and farm animals, as well as wild game such as elk, deer, and reindeer, were, quote, creatures from outer space. They just talked to you flat out that this was what they knew, even if reporters would put a microphone in front of them from a newspaper or a television station or radio and say, who is doing this, they might skirt it. That's when they would come up with, well, it could be predators, disease, or satanic cults, and they knew that those were not the answers. There were also, in reply to the question about eyewitness sightings, this is what was being seen by law enforcement, by reporters, by ranchers, farmers. And this would be where beams of light would be coming down from something round and oval or round in the sky, usually at night. And there would be various eyewitnesses to these beams. And in about half a dozen incidents, I was able to talk with ranchers who had either seen rising up in the beam one of their animals right out of a pasture, or it was being lowered. In those few cases, the ranchers were convinced that it is the UFO using the beam technology that's the one doing the mutilations. But when I asked these people if they would go on camera in front of my lens for the documentary that would be broadcasted on the CBS station in Denver, the answer always was, no, I just can't afford in my ranch work to be considered crazy or have satire, which was so unfair at the time, because the animal mutilation phenomena is definitely, from my perspective now in 2022, it is linked to the presence of a non-human intelligence on our planet. Well, so what is the reason that other life forms in this universe would harvest tissue and fluids from domestic and wild earth animals? It has only been in the last month that I have received voluntarily from a person who has worked for, I'm going to say, in aerospace government projects. And they are getting up there in age. And what this information came to me in a confidential method, saying, I have followed your work, and you deserve to know that one of the reasons for the animal mutilations is that the gray beings, that particular group that is both biological in some cases and artificial intelligence in most of it, they are in some strange way linked to an evolutionary process that has involved our planet Earth. And that periodically, to sustain their ability to be present in this planet and apparently in other work, the information to me was that the Greys need this chemical, a kind of sustenance, specifically from this planet, for some of their gray, we'll call them gray forms, no matter how much is biological or AI. Well, whatever all the reasons for animal mutilations, there are also questions that have come to me recently, like this one from Gus in South Africa. Quote, first, Thank you for all your years of service, and congratulations on 200,000 members. On, Linda, to 500,000. Yeah, let's do it. Thank you, and keep up the amazing work. It's my biggest concern that the apprehension for disclosure from both the EBAs, the extraterrestrial biological entities, and those involved in covering up alien technology is that we humans simply have not evolved or are not advanced enough as a civilization. Imagine if all of a sudden antimatter reactor or anti-gravity technology should fall into the hands of dictatorships, autocracies. What would happen? This power and technology is, in my opinion, just too far advanced for fragile minds and egos. So my questions are, Linda, do you think the secrecy is because we are not ready as civilization to accept that we are not alone? And then second, is it the ETs who want the secrecy about their existence and highly advanced technologies to be kept from humanity until we are guaranteed to be evolved enough to handle the extraterrestrial technology in a safe and peaceful way? It is an excellent email with good questions from South Africa. And what I immediately thought of is Haim Eshed, the former head of Israel's Defense Ministry's Space Directorate. He released his memoir in December of 2020 entitled The Universe Beyond the Horizon, with an epilogue entitled We Are Not Alone in This Universe. And for those of you who have been longtime attendees in our Wednesday night Earthfiles YouTube channel, you know that I did for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a lot of reporting with people doing English translations from the Hebrew of his original book, which was at the time only in Hebrew. Well, he gave Professor and retired General Haim Eshed gave an interview with Israel's most well-known newspaper, Idiot Aronot, in early December of 2020. And General and Professor Haim Eshed said that some Earth humans have been in contact with extraterrestrials from a, quote, galactic federation, and that the unidentified flying objects have asked human leaders not to publish that the ETs are here. And the reason given, according to Haim Eshed, is because they affirmed that the non-human aliens are afraid that humanity is not ready yet for them and their technology. He also affirmed that the non-human aliens are curious about humans, and they are seeking to understand, quote, the fabric of this universe, and that they have cooperation agreements that have been signed with American astronauts and non-human ETs to work together to build an underground base on Mars. He also said that ETs will be allowed to do experiments on Earth officially as part of agreements going forward, and that then President Donald Trump, before President Biden, was aware of the extraterrestrials' existence and was close to taking that information public, but was asked not to in order to, quote, prevent mass hysteria. The ETs have been waiting until today for humanity to develop and reach a stage where we will understand in general what space and spaceships are, close quote. When NBC asked Pentagon spokesperson Sue Goff for comment on Haim Eshed's comments, she declined to comment. Haim Eshed also told the Israeli newspaper, quote, "If I had come up with what I am saying today," meaning in the interview in 2020 December, "and if I had done so only 5 years before in 2015, I would probably have been hospitalized. But today people are already talking differently. I have nothing to lose. I have received my degrees and awards, and I am respected in universities abroad," which he is very much, and his book, which I was able to get translations, and especially it's the epilogue. The first part of the book is about his career in terms of doing satellite development for Israel. It's the epilogue, and he put the title in the epilogue that contains photos on Mars, cases that a lot of people had not heard about, and that include that title, the subtitle in his memoir, "We Are Not Alone in This Universe." So that was really important that he did that. Now, in a sort of related but different question, one of our viewers, Ginny Snodden, she wrote, "Do you believe that our moon is in fact artificial and strategically placed by a superior alien race?" I have been told over the last 43 years at different times by different people, some abductees, some scientists, some aerospace people, that the moon is an artificial machine. I have been told that many times. And to support that, I wanted to share with you some of the science that is behind, I think, that there's been a lot of efforts to sort of drop the hints that the moon is a machine that orbits our planet without being on camera on CBS, ABC, NBC, CNN saying these words. So it's always been sort of deflected and sort of implied. And it wasn't for me, I've been told directly. And I want to just share with you briefly. The fact that the moon is less dense than our Earth is advanced by some as support for the concept that it is hollow, and that the moon's mean density is 3.3 grams per centimeter cube, whereas the Earth is 5.5. One explanation for this discrepancy is that the moon may have been formed by a giant impact which ejected some of the early Earth's upper crust into its orbit, and the Earth's upper mantle and crust are less dense than its core. However, between 1969 and 1977, seismometers installed on the moon by the Apollo missions recorded moonquakes. The moon was described, in fact, as ringing like a bell during some of those earthquakes, specifically the shallow ones. And I remember firsthand when they let fall an impact. It was one of the landers, and it impacted on the moon, and in the newspapers it said the moon rang like a bell. There was an article in Popular Science in March of 1970 that talked about the hollow moon ringing. And here is, on November 20th, 1969, Apollo 12 deliberately crashed the ascent stage of its lunar module onto the moon's surface. NASA reported that the moon rang like a bell for almost an hour, leading to arguments that it must be hollow like a bell. Lunar seismology experiments since then have shown that the lunar body has shallow moonquakes that act differently from quakes on Earth, due to differences in texture, type, and density of the planetary strata. But there is, so far, no evidence of any large empty space inside the body. Okay, that's today, current day, sort of having your cake and eat it too, that there is an unusual ringing in the moon, but it might have a natural explanation. And now what I want to tell you is that the DIA analyst back in December of 1999 that I frequently have referenced on this program answered the same question from me to him. I wanted to know what he would say if I said, do you know if our moon is a technology, is a machine, that it is hollow in the center and it has all kinds of advanced technology inside of the moon to monitor the Earth? And his answer was that he agreed. And I brought up Brian Scott, the abductee who had had a whole series of events occur between California and going to Peru. And he told me that he was shown in some holographic way and was told that the moon was a machine. And the DIA analyst told me that, yes, the Earth's moon is artificially constructed by advanced non-humans with computer technologies placed in the hollow center of the moon technology to monitor Earth, and that it is his statement that at some depth beneath what we would call the moon's surface, there is a metallic sphere that separates the lunar surface with all of its impact craters from the inner core of the monitoring technology. So that is a subject, that particular one that I went into detail about the moon. If we are now finally moving into the age where hopefully the TRAPPIST-1 solar system will be investigated with the Webb telescope, and perhaps one of those planets will be at the leading edge of finally our being told officially we're not alone in this universe, that behind maybe there will be waiting the truth about the origin and the technology that the moon represents. And that's one to just put in a line item. What will we learn more about the moon? And finally, in my sort of prepared going through questions, I was fascinated by this question from Joanne Kay. When I was a child, about 6 to 7 years old, I am 67 years old now, I distinctly remember seeing an owl at night in the window of my upstairs bedroom in New Jersey. Its wings were outstretched but not flapping. In the past couple of years, I am remembering more alien experiences and feel that there was a gray in the foot of the bed. And I read somewhere that the owl imagery is used to mask contact. Has your research shown this? And what I wanted to share with you is that Jim Sparks, who was an abductee, and he wrote this book, The Keepers. Before he wrote his book, he worked with me in Glimpses of Other Realities, Volume 2, High Strangeness. There's an entire chapter in the Jim Sparks experience in which the Greys, for reasons unknown, were teaching Jim math and symbols and doing it in comparison to the American English alphabet and number system. And in his book, when you go to page 27, is a chapter about his abductions, and the paragraph right before the chapter begins says, all of a sudden, on the living room wall, a green glow appeared. It was almost like a cloud roiling there between a couple of picture frames. The green expanded and contracted, and then it began to take form. For an instant, that green cloud looked like a hairless, two-dimensional stick man with large, unforgettable dark eyes, and then it shifted into what seemed like a hologram of an owl, a green and ghostly owl. For those who have familiarity with the abduction syndrome, you already know that the owl has been used in so many cases. And here is what Jim himself wrote. He said, "To me, it soon became apparent that this spectral owl signified, it meant school. It meant time for class. I got to know the owl as a symbol meaning get ready to learn, Jim Sparks. Almost every time the visitors take me, they show me a symbol, and perhaps it keys off some kind of subliminal response in my psyche. And I gather from my abductee brothers and sisters, such as Whitley Strieber, his thoughts on owls have gone very deep in the abductee mindset. For me, though, it was simple. A representation or symbol of an owl meant to adjust my mind to learn. It became obvious to me that there are subtle shadings of meaning introduced with the alteration of these holographic forms by the ETs. And that night, though, when I was sitting on my couch staring at that perched owl with large, strange, round eyes, horns, feathers, beak, and talons staring down at me, you can bet I wasn't paging through Freud's book about the meaning of dreams." Jim had a great sense of humor. And for those who would like to read one of the extraordinary abduction cases that involves also reincarnation, it's one of the most interesting parts of the discussion that I had with Jim Sparks when we were working on the whole chapter that's in Glimpses of Other Realities, Volume 2. The Greys not only taught him the relationship, or a kind of a translation from our numbers and our alphabet into what they said was theirs, they showed him in his mind's eye a whole series of different life and lifetimes on the planet Earth. And in each one, he would have this kind of revelation that whoever the person was that they were focusing on was him in another life. And for him, it was real and it was educational, and he was convinced that reincarnation that has been described by military people in telepathic discussions with Gray types, that the Greys have tried to indicate that reincarnation is, quote, the machinery of this universe, and that our relationship as organic beings to the reincarnation cycles of the souls is something that humans have not been clear, or it has been presented to us through religious types. But from Jim's point of view, and from what I've been told by people in the military who had telepathic communication with one of the Greys, it's more in the like when we talk about the substructure of how this universe is put together. Everything from Planck's constant and what happens in the subatomic particles and out, that the recycling of the soul quantum energy is a hugely vital part of what you would say was the entire consciousness and substructure of the universe. And that's the part we all need to know and understand more. And with this sort of as a preface, that I wanted to highlight some of these subjects for tonight's Q&A, I'm now going to transition to Ian and to Brad with the bell, and from here on out, I will try to do 3-minute questions with Brad and Ian's help. Ian.
Thank you, Linda. First of all, I'd like to get through the super chats this evening.
Oh, okay,
so
yeah.
Here we go. Moonbird.
Hi, Moonbird.
Christy Carter, Teresa Bass, Dry Toast, Deborah Borgen, Jessica Rodriguez, Kathy Ivonsky, Traz, Dorothy Austin, Christina Gomez, and Shane Payne. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I really, really appreciate your long-term support. And we are growing together. And so keep telling friends and people that you know. And for those of you who have not subscribed, see that red arrow. I think it's in the lower right corner of your screen. Click on it. Doesn't cost you anything, but it helps us at Earthfiles YouTube channel in the YouTube channel world. And for those of you who like what we're doing here on the channel, click on that like button. And now, Ian, let's go forward. And Brad, be ready with that ringer bell.
Well, Linda, we've got an audience tonight from all around the world, of course, from all over the United States and Canada, also from many parts of Europe, including France, Sweden, Denmark, and Austria. We've also got viewers in today from Ghana and from Mexico. So thank you. And also not forgetting Australia and New Zealand.
It's wonderful. And even, I think, Ian, we have had people contact us from Ukraine, haven't we?
That's right, we have. And in fact, we were looking at the statistics and we saw that Earthfiles was viewed in the Ukraine, I believe, 24 times at least during the last 7 days. So thank you to our Ukrainian viewers too.
Yeah, God bless you all. And thank you. All right, Ian, what have we...
Okay, Linda, here's the first question. What do you feel comfortable telling us about what you have learned about human-alien hybridization activities, such as those discussed by researchers like Bud Hopkins?
The whole hybrid issue is really complex. I have been told conflicting. One source would say that the hybrids are a positive evolutionary effort to evolve the human species so that it will be perhaps more compatible with the really advanced beings and the advanced space programs. So that has been presented in a positive light. Barbara Lamb, a longtime friend and investigator of hybrids and one of the co-authors of Meet the Hybrids, she feels that the hybrids are a positive evolutionary step supporting what some sources have said. But there are other people who are in aerospace or military or science who will say that they feel we should all have caution. And that the argument is that if we have substantial evidence, medical, genetic evidence, that among the population of 8 billion Homo sapiens sapien, that there are several million, maybe 30 million people who are some percentage of we'll call it an extraterrestrial type, and that there is a mixture of hybrids on the Earth, they will argue that until we know the exact reason and that we had proof, it might be considered an invasion from within. That's one of the cases going back to the time of Bud Hopkins and David Jacobs, and that was their concern. In that context, would knowledgeable human leaders and power brokers contemplate the possibility of how would they detect hybrids and what would they do about it? And I don't have any firm answers. I'm giving you the multifaceted pieces. And some sources have suggested that this decade of 2020 to 2030 that I have talked about before, and that it was the antecedent to it would have been 2012, when we were supposed to go through some kind of huge catastrophe. and it was delayed. And then we get to the complex question of manipulating timelines to delay events that might still erupt. And that's how complicated the whole issue of hybrids are. Thank you, Brad. I've got 15 more seconds. Okay, Ian.
Okay, Linda, the next question, I'm putting these two together because they're both very similar. From Tara D, she says, Linda, do you think you are personally an abductee or contactee or both? She thinks she is both. And Deborah Shelton says, I honestly feel deep down that you were chosen to relay all of what you know to us in the Earthfiles community. Have you ever felt that your path was already chosen for you? I think you bring so much love and light to your work that connects you to all of your listeners.
Well, thank you very much. Inside of myself, because I do have vivid memories. Mom would say, you can't possibly remember that, you were 2 years old, but I do have very vivid memories back to age 2. And that my parents said that they were confused to have this 3-year-old and then 4-year-old asking them questions about God and Christ. And I was not in a family that went on a regular basis to church, or they were not in any specific religions. None of our family was. And so they did not understand why I would come into this life as a little child asking these questions. And I bring this up because to me it's relevant to what I personally feel inside, is that I am somehow linked to what I always think of, have always prayed to, meditate with, which is a divine field that I associate with light, which is why the Nag Hammadi title, the thought that dwells in the light, means so much to me. So from my point of view, the link that I feel so strongly is with the thought that dwells in the light. And having interviewed at least 3,000 people in the abduction syndrome since 1979 to 2022, there is a difference. There's a difference in a feeling. I don't understand precisely, but I do not think that we humans have to put ourselves in some kind of extraterrestrial category in order to look at closeness, when you're born with a closeness to light. I do not think that that is a formula that means it's related in any way to extraterrestrial civilizations. And to help underscore what I mean, if we are in a huge universe that is continuing to expand and has 3 trillion galaxies, and we're just in one, and you take 3 trillion and you multiply it by 100 civilizations only, the number of planets with consciousness is so huge. And there is something in me that feels that all of it, the whole seemingly infinite part of the universe, but there could be a trillion other universes, it's all related to a much bigger piece, and that's the thought that dwells in the light. And that's where I feel my deepest closeness. So that's as best as I can answer to what is a very interesting question. And I suppose on the other side of your question is an issue that all humans, as we finally get to that headline, it's coming sooner than maybe we thought. We are not alone in this universe. This universe is teeming with consciousness. The universe is conscious. And once that occurs, then all of these questions that we're talking about tonight hopefully will be part of a global dialogue. And then maybe we will have positive, productive, trusting relationships with at least some of those with advanced technologies, and that Haim Eshed is probably correct. The technologies that these beings have the ability to use in a universe and move around in space tunnels, traveling 50 light years in 5 Earth days, we wouldn't want that in the hands of autocracies. And so maybe for the first time, I'm seeing that maybe there was some constructive reason to keep the huge story since World War II to now sort of roped off. But I think we're way past that. I know I'm going past my 3 minutes, dear Brad, but this was really an important question. And I hope that I didn't overstretch your patience with me for going longer. But I know that this is going to come up more and more, and let's all be happy to talk about it, especially after the headline breaks. All right, Ian, we have time for at least 2 or 3 more.
Well, Linda, we had so many questions, such a huge response from our viewers that obviously we can't get through them all, but I'm going to link another 2 together, which I think are important. Here we go. Linda, I'm wondering if you've learned of ways people have coped with alien encounters. I had a very close encounter with 3 amber orbs in the spring of 1998, and I've never been able to get the experience out of my mind. I'm hesitant to talk about the event for fear of any kind of publicity affecting my career. Would love to know if others have experienced this type of anxiety. And another one from Brooke says, I'd like to say, I love what you're doing. What are your experiences with implants, and what should someone do if they have one?
That implant question is really good. The first question is profound. Ian, I'll do it this way. The whole implant question, do you try to take them out or not? Whitley Strieber went on the record with his MRIs that he had, I'm just going to use the word implant, in his brain, and it could not be taken out, as I understand. I don't know the current status on Whitley about whether it is would still be in his brain on an MRI, because people who have been in the abduction syndrome and have gotten CAT scans, MRIs, X-rays, and they have hard physical evidence of some kind of an object, whether it's in the brain or in the leg or wherever it is. It will also disappear, which has been one of the puzzles. And another facet on an animal mutilation. This really happened. I talked with the investigator. They came upon an animal mutilation. They were leaning down over the bloodless, clean excision. And he saw movement. He saw movement going right under the, it was partly skin and hide. He wasn't looking through the hide, but the hide was sort of there and the skin was still here. And he saw movement, and he tried to catch up with the movement. What in the world could be under here? And he put his hand trying to go like this, and he realized it had substance. It wasn't like an insect or something. And whatever happened to it, the man who reported this, who was an investigator, said there was something in that mutilated animal that looked technological, but it moved. There are humans who have had we'll just say, some kind of an implant that has been identified, and that there can be movement as well. What is the purpose of the implants? That would be an excellent question for me to talk with Whitley, maybe do an interview, because he's one of the few humans who has both had them and has quite a deep perspective on several of these aspects. So maybe that's something I could do with Whitley in the future. On the question of, do you go to a doctor? Do you get some kind of MRI or X-ray to determine? Some abductees say they want to do that. They want to have the proof. Other abductees say, it's there, I don't want to know for sure. So we're in a kind of strange intersection when it comes to what are the advanced intelligences who could be friendly, neutral, or hostile. What would their reasons be for making implants? Now, I finished that part of the question. Ian, can I have the first part of this question now for this second round?
Yeah, you carry on. Do you want me to repeat any of it?
Yes, the first part.
Okay, the first part was, I'm wondering if you've learned of ways people have coped with alien encounters. This was the guy who, Kenneth, and he had his experience with 3 amber orbs in the spring of 1998. He says he wonders if others have experienced the same type of anxiety. We're talking about some sort of support network, and you and I have both managed to help some people who have had experiences they find traumatic to have some help from sources.
Okay, the first issue is the orb, or our orbs. Going all the way back to 1979 to 80 when I was working on A Strange Harvest and meeting Bud Hopkins, and I was living in Philadelphia during that period of time, and Bud Hopkins and I and others would get together to talk about all of the various aspects that abductees report. And one of the single most common is from age 4 on, the appearance of orbs in a bedroom, usually at night. And that they could be from about the size of a dime up to a quarter, up to, say, a softball, up to the largest that I know of would be something like around a beach ball, and that is supposed to be something called a diastomere, D-I-A-S-T-O-M-E-R-E. I don't know if it is found anywhere outside of discussions with people who have worked in the government. And if the diastomere is known to be a functioning alien technology that can do many things, the larger versions can have they can turn, and coming out of them will be a shadow person. Or there was a story, I think it was in Tibet, and it is in a book, and it was about I think it was a Bhutanese, and they were observing as they went up a mountain, a sphere that was moving about 3 to 4 feet above the air, glowing. And they became so fascinated with what was this. They didn't want to run up to it, but they wanted to keep up with where was this going. And all of a sudden, this basketball-sized light did one of these turns, and out of the light came a fully garbed, what to them looked like a priest, who kept walking. Is that an example of non-human travel in which however they exist, they are able to focus and resonate through this strange technology so that they're not even traveling in a craft, but somehow the sphere manifested them as an organic being here on this planet, no matter where they originated. The orbs, all of them, are in the category of some kind of telepathic communication, whether they're little or all of these other sizes. What most humans do not know is, even if they have had 6 times, 12 times, 20 times orbs over their life, which orb, with which size, at which time, is related to which intelligence. That's another one of the confusions. But the orbs, the idea of light, light as a communicator, light as a resonator, light as a beam that can pick up matter and put matter down. Light is one of the most common of all of the features, from little orbs to beams, when you get to the entire extraterrestrial descriptions by people over centuries. And we humans, citizens, we have been left out of the dialogue. And hopefully we're going to learn more. And I'm hoping I can contribute a little bit, I'm always trying to be objective about what the facts could be. So with that, Ian, I think that is a really good question for me to also take to Whitley and try to do in a future program.
I think so. There were quite a few questions about orbs as well, including one from someone who actually touched an orb. And they ask if they know of anyone else who's touched an orb. They say that when they did touch the orb, they have grooves in their thumbnail ever since.
Interesting. Well, these are the kinds of data points, you guys. For those of you who've had interactions with orbs, send me exactly the facts, the dates, the time, what you heard, what you saw in your mind's eye, if you had any physical residue. And this is the way that we can build a kind of body of data from a lot of people that then is extremely valuable to share with professionals. So this is one of those subjects, orbs to larger lights. What all can you send us? And we'll continue to follow up. And now we're at the end of this hour, and I have enjoyed being able to share some of this with you all very much. And I'm going to try, going forward, to balance out between the introductions of current news and when we're doing our production elements, and always have some Q&A with you. I will try to organize this with Ian so that always in the last 10 minutes or 15 minutes, we'll make sure that we're getting questions. And Ian, you're keeping sort of a folder now on questions that are coming to us, right? Ian, are you there?
Yeah, I am. Yes, I'm keeping a folder on everything and printing things out as we go.
So it is, the one thing I don't want to do is just hurry through trying to get as many questions as possible, when I really do feel, and if you feel otherwise, tell me, but I really do feel that being able to take these fascinating questions and go into them in some depth, that's where I then begin to get more emails that say, I never thought anybody would describe, but this is what happened to me. It means that we're talking more deeply, talking longer and more deeply about subjects that had just not really been addressed in many ways. So on that note for tonight, for all of you around the world, whatever your spiritual relationship is with the universe, may it grow, may it make you stronger, may we all know more depth, and bless the dear, dear Ukrainian people. Love you guys.
Turn on closed captions for YouTube videos by clicking the white CC button on the lower right. The default language for Linda's videos is English. If you would like to see the captions in another language, click on the white Settings button next to the CC button. Select Subtitles CC, and then select Auto Translate. Select a language, and the captions will now appear in that language.
Sort of gone through, and they will hold their heads. I never had a cat do that before. And they'll pull against the comb, helping me get out snarls. And I think it's the best they've ever been.